Breaking Bad is one of the most popular and critically acclaimed TV shows in history, being rewarded with basically every award a TV show can win. A major factor for its popularity is the main character, a high school teacher called
Walter Hartwell White,
also known as
Heisenberg,
as well as
the danger,
and
the one who knocks.
after being diagnosed with lung cancer, he starts to cook meth in order to pay for his medical treatment, as well as leaving behind money for his wife and 2 children in case he loses the battle against the disease. Therefore, there are dozens of videos explaining and analyzing his transformation from a good man to, well, this. My problem with these videos is that they solely look at Walter's change instead of pointing out what we as the consumer can learn from his journey and what we can implement into our own lives. So kings and queens, here's the guide on how to unleash your inner Heisenberg.
Are you ready?
Okay, let's go.
A quick note, when I refer to Heisenberg in this video, I mean the attributes that are worth striving for. So when I say Heisenberg is born now, I don't mean scenes like for example Walter letting Jane die, but scenes where he puts his life into his own hands.
I prefer to see it as the study of change.
Number 1. Change. In the beginning of the show, we get to know Walter as a good, virtuous, hardworking and loving man. Despite that, life doesn't treat him very nicely. His income is too low, so in order to pay the bills, Walter has to work in a car wash in addition to teaching chemistry at a high school for which he's clearly overqualified. He's constantly disrespected and emasculated by basically everyone around him. His much more charismatic and successful brother-in-law Hank, the owner of the car wash he works at, his students and also his wife. Well, luckily at least not by his own son.
You're a pussy.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
On top of all of that, he's diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer, which is basically a death sentence and represents the turning point of his life. So the only thing he receives in return for being an honest, hardworking man who tries to please everybody around him is disrespect, emasculation, a passionless marriage and lung cancer. And here we clearly see that life is unfair. Maybe you were fired from your job even though you've really been working hard and contributing to the company's success, but due to the economic situation there was no other way. Or maybe your girlfriend cheated on you despite all of your efforts to make this relationship as good as possible. Sometimes life just doesn't care and does whatever it wants to do. However, after the diagnosis, Walter's entire attitude changes. He finally starts to pursue everything he wants to do. Making money, taking risks and being bold. Literally, being bold. Making love, not tolerating being treated disrespectfully, etc. Heisenberg is born now.
I am awake.
He starts to stand up for his son when being bullied by other teenagers and stands up against his brother-in-law Hank, Bogdan the car wash owner, the guy with which his wife cheated on him. Dude, that was so hilarious.
I'm talking with Ted.
His former business partners who cut him out in the past, even the police when he felt not being treated fairly. Also, the passion in his marriage is back again. His internal change is also reflected in his overall appearance. He turns from looking like an average suburban dad to an absolute chef. Wearing fitting shirts, a clean looking goatee combined with his bald head make him look totally badass. So, what can we learn from this? When his family is trying to convince him to take the treatment, which at first he didn't want to do because Walt didn't want to be remembered being only artificially alive, he states, "Sometimes I feel like I never actually make any of my own choices. I mean, my entire life, it just seems I never had a real say about any of it." This is a big factor to why Walter is so relatable in the beginning. The majority of our current generation can identify themselves with him because we feel the exact same way. Nevertheless, we see that he had it in him the entire time and the diagnosis unleashed his true potential, so to speak. Unfortunately, it took 50 years and a death sentence for him to realize it. The time he has left now is too valuable to waste it by trying not to step on anyone's toes and not pursuing his most important goals. The good thing is that we don't need a tragic event like Walter to happen in order to realize that life is not fair and it doesn't care about our feelings and that we should live our lives exactly the way we want. No matter how we and others perceive ourselves right now, we can always change and it is never too late for that. Doesn't matter if it's the change from shy to confident, lazy to productive, or being overweight to becoming GigaChat himself. The big question now is how can we undergo this change and live up to our full potential? This brings us to the next point.
I have spent my whole life scared.
Number 2. Fear. The number one thing we can do in order to drastically improve every aspect of our lives and unleash our inner Heisenberg is to embrace and overcome our fears. As Walter says, fear is the real enemy. Knowing that he will die in the near future, he dropped every hindering thought and started to do the things that weren't imaginable to him a couple of weeks ago. No matter the outcome, you will basically always feel better and prouder after doing something that makes you tremble just thinking about it. For example, just look at Walter's reaction after blowing up Tuco's crypt to collect the money that Tuco owed him. This pure animalistic outburst of emotions. Obviously, we won't go around making drugs, shooting people and causing plane crashes, but the principle remains the same. It can be very small things like trying out a new haircut or getting a gym membership despite being intimidated by all these strong-looking people. And there is only one way to overcome your fears, and it is facing them. That's it. No book, no video, no strategy will make it any easier for you. So, start with small things, and over time you can gradually increase the intensity of discomfort. Walter had a very strong motivation, making enough money to pay for his treatment and leave behind money for his family before it's too late. These days, however, most of young people living in the Western world lack this kind of motivation and hunger. For example, why should somebody go through all the trouble of getting a girl? First, expose yourself to the possibility of a hurtful rejection, spending money, effort and time on her, etc., when you can just open up your web browser and use dirty videos to satisfy your needs. Why put in the work to become a badass yourself when you can watch TV show characters become one? Today's standards basically guarantee us survival, which is of course a great thing, however, it makes us complacent. We need to create a real deep hunger for our goals and dreams so that we are motivated to do the uncomfortable things without needing a cancer diagnosis to do so. The best way to achieve this is to eliminate the behaviors that make us feel like achieving something without putting in any work, like the dirty videos, TikTok, video games, etc. Like Bryan Cranston, the actor who played Walter, said himself during one of his award speeches, "I'd like to dedicate this to all the sneaky Petes of the world who thought that maybe settling for mediocrity was a good idea because it was safe. Don't do it. Take a chance, take a risk, it's really worth it." Doing the things that scare you the most are most likely the ones having the most effect on your success, no matter what aspect of life.
A man provides for his family.
Number 3. Provider. Another key aspect of unleashing your inner Heisenberg is to realize that as a man, one of your main purposes in life is to provide for the ones you love. This means work as hard as you can. Ironically, before his diagnosis, Walter was already a very hard-working man, taking on 2 time-consuming jobs. The best way would be to combine your work ethics with your passion or interests. You can see Walter's love for chemistry in many scenes. Just look at Walt's face when Gus is showing him his new lab equipment. He's in pure awe. Or when Walter and Gail are talking about why they are doing what they're doing.
It is magic. It still is.
Also, the original script of the last episode states during his death scene, Walt is back where he belongs. He's back with his true love, as well as, and yet his final expression is one of feigned satisfaction. The funny thing is, just like in the car wash, Walt often has to clean barrels and other equipment, so he partially has to do the same work but under different circumstances, which make it fulfilling now. Ironically, while working more than the average person, it doesn't really feel like work anymore, as we can see during Walt's last conversation with Skyler.
I liked it.
Another key reason for Walt's success is his competence and skill set.
I was good at it.
Without his knowledge, he wouldn't have been able to create a product that helped him to work with the big players like Tuco and Gus. It's not about intelligence per se, but about being an expert in your particular field. We don't have to become another Albert Einstein, but we should always keep learning and reading about our profession and trying to improve. However, when combining your work ethics and competence with facing fears by, for example, taking on tasks that might seem overwhelming at first, or giving an intimidating presentation, the results will be the most promising. And even if it doesn't work out the way you want it to, first of all, you will gain unimaginable personal growth with every obstacle you face, and secondly, and more importantly, you can look in the mirror with pride and honestly can say, I tried as hard as I could. And speaking of honesty, here comes point number 4.
Did it for me.
Number 4. Truth. Walter lies to basically everyone he loves and cares about throughout the entire show and entirely screwed up his relationships with them. A few examples would be Skyler, his son Walter Jr., and partner in crime Jesse. After a while, everyone is distrusting him. Especially as a man, we should be like a rock that others can rely on instead of shying away from our problems and trying to dodge them by lying. According to Professor Jordan Peterson, and consider all his knowledge of human psychology, the most important rule one could follow to improve one's life is
tell the truth or at least don't lie.
like Mark Twain said, the best thing about telling the truth is that you don't have to remember what you said. A good example would be the scene where Walter is being a physical and emotional mess. Nevertheless, his son said he really enjoyed this conversation because he was being real for the first time in those past 2 years. Even though their relationship is absolutely crushed, look how Skyler's face loosens up and shoulders drop when Walt is finally revealing,
You did it for me.
of course not in the beginning, but throughout the show he had many possible opportunities to leave the meth business with enough money for his family. It's like the barrier that was created through his lies is gone now. She knows that he is being open and honest in this moment, just like with Walter Jr. When his family tries to convince Walt to do the treatment, and Walt explains his reasons which we have discussed earlier, whether you can understand it or not, we still see that by communicating honestly and directly, the entire situation between them improved. The truth can and often will be brutal and harsh, however, the consequences of lying are even more brutal and harsher. It only solves your problem short term. It doesn't even solve them, it just postpones them. Like most things in life, considering the long term is pretty much always the better alternative. But it also means being honest to yourself. Whatever it is that you are doing right now, you can always ask yourself, is this really benefiting me? Is this really helping me achieving my goals? The next time you're about to binge watch a TV show again, or shying away from approaching your crush, just ask yourself these questions and always answer honestly. Like Peterson said, if you don't know what to do when, for example, feeling overwhelmed, just tell the truth and the answer will come to you. Thank you so much for watching this video.